The seeds of Henry Hill's demise were planted long before he became a good fella.
Hey, give me some ice, kid, will you?
Henry Hill first comes into contact with the mafia as an adolescent when he takes a job at a mob joint. Top man is Paul Vario, a capo in the Lucchese crime family, one of the most violent mobs in New York.
He wasn't born a criminal, but he happened to have been reared in a neighborhood infested with mafia gangsters.
Ed McDonald is the former head of the organized crime strike force in Brooklyn. He will get Henry into the witness protection program.
He was attracted to the excitement and to the power and to the glamour of what he saw in front of him, to be a movie star with muscle. And that's really what he wanted, that plus the excitement of being a gangster.
At home, Henry's father struggles to provide for his wife and 7 children. Paul Vario, known as Paulie, will become the father he felt he never had. Henry is half Sicilian, so Paulie naturally trusts the boy and starts giving him more responsibility. But it's while waiting card games that Paulie introduces him to the man that will shape his future criminal career. Jimmy the Gent Burke. Henry Hill is immediately drawn to the charismatic mobster.
He loved the fact that Jimmy Burke would be respected wherever he went, into a restaurant, into a nightclub. Chairs would pull out immediately.
So Jimmy the Gent had a huge impact on Henry Hill. He would hand out $20 bills, and that's what Henry Hill really wanted. He aspired to that kind of richness, that kind of luxury.
But behind the extravagant facade, Jimmy is a ruthless gangster.
He's someone who demands respect. You don't mess with Jimmy the Gent.
As his stock rises, Hill starts to run errands with Capo Paulie. The teenager sees it as a privilege, but Henry is about to discover the cold facts of mob life. When Paulie drops in on his mistress, Henry thinks it's a routine visit. But the lovesick woman had made the cardinal mistake of contacting Paulie's wife. She had let slip about their affair.
Paulie then, with Henry there, went to her house and beat her savagely with a baseball bat.
And he put her in a hospital, broken neck, broken bones, and this was a woman, mind you.
It's a shocking lesson for Henry. The mob can forgive anyone but a rat.
Woman, child, or otherwise, if you do break that code of silence, the consequences can be quite severe.
It's a lesson Henry will remember for the rest of his life. By the early 60s, cargo worth $30 billion a year was passing through the newly built JFK airport. The mob quickly catches on to the criminal opportunity, and soon Jimmy Burke is the king of the cargo hijackers.
At Kennedy Airport, you could find anything from fur coats, jewelry, expensive watches, anything else that one could possibly imagine. These are cargo containers that at times contained hundreds of thousands of dollars in merchandise. And this was the reason why Kennedy Airport was the hotbed, the nucleus for hijacking.
When Henry gets a taste of the hijacking racket, his eyes are opened. For his first heist, he is partnered up with another young gun, a tough guy named Tommy DeSimone.
They were about the same age. They became friends, but they were two different elements. Tommy DeSimone was a loose cannon. He was a brute, 6'4", 240 pounds, and he could really handle himself. Henry Hill was peaceful, would avoid violence. Tommy DeSimone would embrace violence.
But for this heist, Tommy's violent nature will be kept in check as Henry sweet-talks his way through security. Once inside, he convinces a guard to open up the loading bay with the oldest trick in the book. 2 fingers in the back.
The idea that with 2 fingers you can convince a guard to open up the door for you. It establishes for him that the airports are good hunting grounds.
Henry's plan plays out seamlessly. The guard doesn't resist.
He did it without violence, without killing anyone, without hurting anyone, or without even risking being hurt himself. It was intoxicating to him. Addictive as well, naturally.
With the guard tied up, they leave the truck yard with trailers full of merchandise.
Within a matter of minutes, he had his hands on thousands of dollars in swag.
And for Hill, the important thing was that no one got hurt. With his new pal Tommy, Henry's gang is complete. And with his share of the loot, $40,000 in today's money, Henry at last has the means to emulate his hero.
For Henry, having money wasn't a matter of building up abstract wealth. It was having enough money to go into clubs that he loved. He was always the center of attention.
But Henry knows that to be respected by the mafia, he needs a wife. A married man has more to lose, and when Henry is introduced to a young Karen Friedman, he initially sees her as a means to an end.
Henry meets Karen, and initially he didn't really like her that much, but was attracted to her over time because she's a say-it-like-it-is New Yorker. But she also was very innocent, and Karen really didn't know what she was getting involved with at the end of the day.
He finally gets Karen to come on a date with him to the Copacabana, and Sammy Davis Jr. is performing, and he sends over champagne. At that point, she realizes that this is someone who has potential.
Within months, the couple marry and move to the leafy suburbs of Long Island. But Karen will soon learn that Henry's heart lies with the mob.
I think Henry's biggest problem, from a personality standpoint, was that he had an addictive personality. And part of that addiction was that being addicted to the glitz, the glamour, and the excitement of being in the mob.
For now, Henry is where he wants to be. But Karen is desperate for her husband to go straight.
Karen has been trying to convince Henry to pull away from the mob, really striving to have a normal life here.
Even with the financial success, Karen really wanted a stable life for her kids.
But the pull of mob life in the city is too strong for Henry to take her seriously.
He was an excitement junkie. He was somebody who wanted to be on the edge all the time. He was addicted to the thrill and to the excitement of the mafia.
It wouldn't be long before Henry returns to the scene of his first big score, the Lucchese crime family's playground, JFK Airport.
The cargo buildings had no security whatsoever. The foreign airlines were very, very lax. Maybe they felt that being in the United States, crime was non-existent. Well, they were wrong.
Hill gets a tip-off that almost $500,000 in cash is being stored at the Air France depot. The money is being held behind one locked door. All Henry needs to open it is a key. While others might turn to violence to get it, Henry devises a pain-free plan. He gets the key holder drunk and then organizes a distraction.
After the guard and the prostitute left the room, they frolicked for approximately maybe an hour and a half. Henry Hill went back into the room and removed the key to the vault from the key ring attached to the guard's pants.
Henry duplicates the key and returns it, and the guard is none the wiser.
Henry comes up with a plan that is wonderfully gentlemanly, and it's a beautifully elegant plan.
They walk into the Air France depot and unlock the door to the safe room. They locate the packets of cash, stuff as many as they can into a suitcase, and walk out. Henry left with $480,000 in cash, around $6.5 million in today's money. Without using violence, Henry was earning a reputation as a man who could help the mob get rich.
So when this happened, it really allowed Henry to move up the ladder in the mob, knowing that he finally gained the respect of people that he himself has respected all his life.
But just as Henry seems on the verge of the big time, the violence-averse Goodfella gets cold feet. Karen convinces Henry to go straight. And so with Paulie's blessing, he buys a club in Queens called The Sweet. Paulie even banned the Vario crew from visiting the club.
Henry was a natural restaurateur. He loved treating people well. I think Henry really felt that it was the right thing to do to try and establish a legitimate business, go straight.
But despite Paulie's ban, it isn't long before his old partners in crime, Jimmy and Tommy, visit his club. With a life outside the mob within their grasp, it's the last thing the Hills want to see. But the boys have plans for a new venture, and Henry is sucked back into their world.
Henry Hill is at a moment in organized crime when America becomes involved in drug culture. Part of partying, part of enjoying yourself is using cocaine. This is the drug of success.
This was something that was banned in the Five Families in New York City. They learned that the people who were facing lengthy jail sentences for narcotics trafficking were likely to cooperate.
The upside is dealing drugs would be lucrative, and Henry's new club is off the radar.
Henry was violating this edict in the Lucchese crime family. If Vario learned about that, then he would be killed. But because he was using their narcotics, he became extremely careless.
As ex-FBI agent Steve Carbone reveals, it's not long before he's addicted to the merchandise as much as the profits.
He was almost obsessed. He was on the way to disaster. And what happened is the drugs finally got him.
And Henry isn't the only one. Tommy DeSimone becomes overwhelmed by the stimulant. It was only a matter of time before someone triggered the hothead to violence. That man is Billy Batts, a high-ranking mobster just released from prison.
Tommy is absolutely whacked out on cocaine. He's just out of control.
Batts makes a joke at Tommy's expense. He erupts and bludgeons Batts to death with his pistol.
The actual killing of Billy Batts is an absolute explosion of violence. Henry is right in the middle of it, witnessing it, unable to stop it.
In that instant, Henry's world is turned upside down. Billy Batts is no ordinary mobster. Billy Batts is a made man. He's sworn his life to the mafia, and for that, he receives complete protection. The penalty for killing a made man is death.
Billy Batts is in a state of hyperprotection, and even another made man can't kill a made man. Being that now the three of them are equally endangered by this, the only thing that Henry could do is help dispose of the body.
For better or worse, Henry now knows that his fate is tied to Jimmy the Gent and Tommy DeSimone.
Once they've carried out this killing together, he is now completely bound to organized crime. There's no way out for him at this point.
The murder will haunt them for the rest of their lives. But for now, they've covered their tracks. With the murder hanging over him, Henry Hill receives some good news. His friend, a bookmaker named Marty Krugman, has contacts at Kennedy Airport. There's about to be a large shipment of untraceable cash moving through the Lufthansa cargo terminal.
Henry knew, as soon as he heard about it, that there was a great opportunity here. Anytime Henry learned of an opportunity for a score, he would do one thing. He would immediately go to Jimmy Burke and tell Jimmy about it.
Henry has given the floor plans of the cargo terminal and valuable intel on the security.
They knew the outline. They knew sort of the geography of the cargo terminal. They knew where the money was being kept. They knew where the jewelry was being kept.
Jimmy assembles a crew of hardened armed robbers. But Henry isn't among them.
Jimmy would not allow him to go on the Lufthansa robbery because he couldn't trust him, because Henry was just not a reliable, violent gangster. Burke and DeSimone were people who had reputations for being killers. Henry was sort of a tag-along guy.
Under cover of darkness, the crew make their move. They beat up a guard at the entrance to the Lufthansa cargo terminal.
Whether it's the cocaine or whether it's the fact that they've already together committed a violent crime, it's the first crime where they really brutalize the Lufthansa employees.
Now, they apply mental torture.
The gunman took the driver's licenses from all the employees and told them that if they identified them, that they knew who they were and where they lived.
It worked. The terrified men get them into the vault. Henry may not have been on the robbery, but his intelligence delivers.
It turned out it was the largest robbery in the history of the United States, over $5 million in cash, and probably well over $1 million in jewelry.
Henry helped secure the equivalent of $30 million in today's money, and was in line for a fortune.
Henry got much more excited afterwards when Jimmy told him we had so much we didn't know what to do with it.
I think Henry was proud that he really was, in a way, responsible for the largest robbery in the history of the United States.
Within 48 hours, the FBI assign over 100 agents to the case. Ed McDonald, former head of the organized crime strike force in Brooklyn, is put in joint charge.
Informants were going wild. And within days, everybody in law enforcement knew that the Burke crew was responsible for the robbery. The question is, how do you get proof? You have to move slowly. You have to gather evidence against them.
The FBI puts the Burke crew under intense surveillance.
We decided that we would try to get bugs in cars. And mostly what we got was horrible disco music and the heating in the car. At the end of the day, our electronic surveillance produced nothing.
They hold out little hope when they show a Lufthansa guard photographs of the Burke crew. It seems like a lost cause, as the robbers wore masks. But as unlikely as it is, within a matter of minutes, they get a breakthrough.
Tommy DeSimone was the individual guarding the captives.
Head down.
And he removed the ski mask momentarily just to cool his face. And the Lufthansa employees had a good look at him and were able to ultimately identify him.
The man, still terrified from the robbery, refuses to testify in court. But they know they're on the right track. Henry, Jimmy, and Tommy are sitting on $5 million in cash. But the FBI is breathing down their necks. The FBI gets another break when they discover the getaway van driven by gang member Stax Edwards. Joint Team Leader Steve Carbone remembers the moment it was found.
I was there that day. We found it, put it in the garage, and did a forensic on it. Edwards was supposed to get rid of it, burn it, crush it. He didn't.
Investigators track Edwards to his apartment. But Edwards won't be talking. Six bullets in his head and chest tell the FBI that Jimmy Burke's unraveling. And he has a brutally simple plan to silence the heist crew. He'll murder everyone involved.
Burke was beyond himself. He couldn't handle it because he thought any minute the walls were going to come tumbling down.
Next on Jimmy's hit list is Marty Krugman, the bookmaker who gave Henry the Lufthansa tip-off.
Marty Krugman was a potential weak link, and shortly after the robbery, Marty Krugman went missing.
The bloodbath continues against anyone involved, however slight.
There was a homicide of a fellow by the name of Richard Eaton, who was found strung up in a freezer. And he didn't even really have anything to do with it. Every time we reached out for a subject, pretty much he was dead.
They could very well have been people who would have cooperated if we leaned on them heavily enough. And unfortunately, they got to them before we did.
Henry is helpless to stop Jimmy. As the body count nears 13, it becomes clear that no one is safe. While Henry Hill is alive, he is just another weak link. Henry is in a corner. If the FBI doesn't get him, Jimmy will. And it's surely only a matter of time before the mafia links him to the death of made man Billy Batts. But some good news. Henry learns that his best friend, Tommy DeSimone, is about to become a made man. It seems if the mafia knows about the killing of Billy Batts, they don't care much.
Jimmy Burke is extraordinarily proud. This is someone who has attained his position being under the wing of Jimmy the Gent. It's a very proud moment.
As a made man, Tommy will be untouchable, and Jimmy and Henry can breathe a little easier. But the promotion is a ploy. Instead of making his bones, Tommy is whacked. Paulie knows about the killing of Billy Batts.
Tommy DeSimone was somebody who was wild. In that world, with the rules that they follow, he sort of got what he deserved.
If the mafia knows that Tommy killed Billy Batts, the chances are they know everything.
Although Tommy committed the murder, they helped dispose of the body. And basically, once Tommy's been killed, it will just be a matter of time before they're killed. As someone who's not a made man, he is completely subject to justice as Paulie sees it. He's in extraordinary danger.
With Henry's world spiraling out of control, He survives by trafficking narcotics. It's a desperate gamble, because under mafia law, the penalty for dealing drugs is death.
So every moment he feared someone, an executioner, approaching him, either at his doorstep or perhaps in the streets.
And it isn't long before his past catches up with him.
Henry thought that that was the end. He just braced for that final blow, thinking that the executioner had finally caught him.
But the shot doesn't come. The man is a cop.
He feels this wave of relief because at that moment he's not going to be shot.
Henry is arrested for narcotics trafficking by the Nassau County Police Department. Within 24 hours, arrangements are made to turn him over to the FBI. With so many dead leads, Henry's arrest is the break they've been waiting for.
Jimmy Burke and that crew knew if Henry wanted to, he could rat on all of them.
Facing 25 years to life for dealing drugs or dying with his family at the hands of the mafia, Henry tries to bargain.
They always think, I don't have to give everything up. I'll be able to give part of it up, and the guys will still like me. He was thinking about getting some other small-time guys for extortion, loan sharking, those types of crimes.
But Henry also knows the price of ratting out the mob. So the FBI agents lay down their ace card, a wiretap recording of Jimmy Burke. Jimmy wants Henry dead. And so does Paul Vario, for Hill's drug use.
Henry was unbelievably desperate. He was worried about his family, his kids, so there was no question. He knew as soon as he got out, he was dead. Burke or Vario would take care of him.
He knew that life was spiraling out of control. There was no way to turn. He hit a brick wall.
After weeks of mounting pressure, Hill finally cracks.
Parole officer called me and said, you know, he wants to speak to me. But once you've done that, it looks like you're looking for help. And that means you might be willing to give up something for that help.
With nowhere left to run, Henry reveals all.
It became apparent that he had a lifetime of crime with these guys, and he was able to make cases as a witness.
He was a font of information, he was very reliable, and he was going to be an invaluable witness.
They make him an offer that might just save his life. If he testifies against Jimmy Burke and Paul Vario, they'll put Henry and his family into witness protection.
Henry really had nowhere to turn. Everything was crashing down on him, and we were his salvation.
They enter the witness protection program. And the Hill family disappear from the records. From his safe house, Henry makes secret trips to New York under armed guard to rat out the entire Lucchese crime family.
He had to be guarded, 24/7. They knew that he was cooperating. The minute he left there, his life was in danger.
He was scared. I mean, he really was scared. I mean, he was in constant fear that we're going to retaliate. They were going to come look for him and kill him.
The FBI agents are astonished as Hill gives up a lifetime's worth of evidence.
We weren't sure what he was going to offer us, but we did know he knew this group better than anyone.
Hill's testimony gets his personal godfather, Capo Paul Vario, put behind bars for 10 years.
He was the father that Henry didn't feel he had, but I think he also realized that it was a matter of Paul or him.
After years of giving evidence, Henry testifies that his mentor, Jimmy Burke, killed Richie Eaton, the man whose body was found frozen in a refrigerator. Jimmy the Gent Burke is sentenced to life in prison.
He wrote Burke off, and unfortunately, Burke was the victim of Henry Hill's testimony.
He becomes the most infamous mob rat in history. His evidence helps put away 50 members of organized crime. And in the eyes of the mafia, every one carries a death sentence. The witness protection marshals relocate Hill far from the New York mob. The Hill family start a new life with new names in Omaha, Nebraska. This is where the film Goodfellas ends, with Henry free from the mob's clutches. But in the real story, Henry Hill's life was in more danger than it had ever been. The witness protection marshals call the family's home with bad news. Jimmy Burke knows Henry is hiding in the Midwest.
Paulie and Jimmy were dedicated to finding Henry Hill. No matter how long it would take, Henry was sure that they would hunt him down and kill him. And it was just a matter of time.
The marshals aren't taking any chances. The Hill family is forced to build a new life again in another part of the country. A new beginning with a new identity should see life improve for the Hill family. But after years addicted to drugs, money, and adrenaline, Henry starts to unravel.
Henry had a great deal of difficulty adapting to life. He still wanted to be part of the old life. He backslided, and he began to drink heavily. He began to use drugs.
So Henry was guilt-ridden and full of remorse. He loathed himself for having snitched on his friends. And in my opinion, ultimately, he wanted to end his life.
He can't resist telling everyone that he is Henry Hill, the mastermind behind the mafia's biggest heist.
Maybe because he was getting addicted to drugs and his brain was just fogged out. You know, he would shoot his mouth off about who he was.
He would get a couple of drinks in him, and yeah, you hear that story about Lufthansa, you know, that's me.
If he thought about it, he would keep his mouth shut, but he just wanted the attention.
As Steve Carbone discovers, Hill had given up on his family.
He called me once. He said, you know, you gotta congratulate me. So I said, Henry, what for? He says, I got married. I said, oh, congratulations. And then I thought for a second, I said, Henry, you are married. I know, but that was with my other name. Now I'm in the program. He got married under his new name.
Inevitably, his wife leaves him. And it's not long before the witness protection marshals cut him adrift.
The witness protection program finally said, look, we're not going to have any more of this. So they kicked him out of the program.
Off the rails and with no one looking out for him, Henry falls in with a gang of drug traffickers.
Why would Henry do this kind of stuff? Why was Henry trafficking in narcotics? He was an excitement junkie. He was somebody who wanted to be on the edge all the time.
Unknown to Henry, the gang are under DEA surveillance.
The DEA thought that Henry getting into the kind of trouble he was getting into after being involved in the witness protection program, that he deserved to be arrested.
The DEA throws Henry Hill into the worst place imaginable. Terminal Island Prison. It's a penitentiary just outside Los Angeles, run by the Gambinos, a mob family with close ties to Paul Vario.
The Gambinos certainly held sway. So when it became known that Henry Hill was one of the prisoners, he was in much more danger than he ever was on the outside. Basically, the guards guard the doors and the prisoners regulate life within the prisons.
paranoid about his safety, Hill gets word to Ed McDonald, his old contact from the Justice Department.
He contacted me and asked if I would write a letter for him. And I said, look, I can't write a letter recommending that you not go to prison. But what I can do is I can write a letter explaining the threats that you fear, and I can talk about your significance, your value as a witness.
The judge gives Hill a suspended sentence, and he enters an intense drug treatment program. Henry's luck has started to turn. He hears Paul Vario has died. The 73-year-old capo is no longer a threat.
It doesn't mean that he's completely out of the woods, but certainly it was a major relief to him.
But as long as Jimmy Burke is alive, Henry will always be looking over his shoulder. Henry is eventually released from drug treatment, but with no money and no protection, he is a sitting duck.
Henry lived every day looking over his shoulder. I mean, he was in constant fear that people in the world of organized crime were going to retaliate. They were going to come look for him and kill him.
There's a lot of people who would still want to make their name, people who would want to kill Henry just to impress people in organized crime.
But when his past catches up with him, it's not in the way he expects. Henry is approached by Nicholas Pileggi, an author keen to tell his story, and no one can predict what happens next. Hollywood legend Martin Scorsese wants to turn Hill's story into a movie. And Goodfellas transforms Henry's life.
He got to talk to Ray Liotta. He got to talk to Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci. He was like a hero. He would sign autographs.
The film should remind the mob of Henry's betrayal. But when it's released, it has an unexpected upside.
Goodfellas made Henry such a star. Those who wanted to see him dead no longer would go near him.
As the years pass, whatever lingering grudges the mob holds die. When in 1996, Jimmy Burke is taken by lung cancer. Henry Hill, the mob rat, has outlived all other Goodfellas.
He's the person that commits the largest crime in the history of the United States, and does so while being a complete screw-up.
And 40 years on from the Lufthansa heist, the loot has never been recovered.
We learned from Henry that a good part of the money was used in drug deals. So it wasn't like they were putting money in the bank or getting involved with mutual funds. They were using the money for sort of street deals.
But the real story is of a mob rat who put 50 gangsters behind bars.
I don't think he regretted for a moment. He ratted out his friends. I think he realized that that's what he had to do to save himself, and he didn't look back.
More by luck than design, Henry survives his time in the mob and witness protection. The day after his 69th birthday, he passes away at his home in Los Angeles.
Henry died in his bed the night after a great birthday party. Is an extraordinary, successful life for a man that was Henry Hill.
The real Henry Hill was a guy who was a small-time wise guy who thought he could beat the system. And ultimately, you know what? I think Henry did beat the system.